you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Donald Trump gives Iran a green light to start building nuclear weapons all over again. What do you say, everybody? Great to see you today. Here we go on a Wednesday, May 9. A very dangerous day for the United States of America after Donald Trump rips up an agreement that had been signed, of course, by all of our allies, of most important allies, at least the UK, France, Germany, including, in addition to Russia and China. And Donald Trump says they're all wrong, and I am right, leading us down the path of getting closer and closer to a nuclear, another nuclear arms race and another nuclear war. We'll keep you on top of that. Plus, take a look at all the primaries yesterday. Some interesting results in Ohio, in West Virginia, in North Carolina, and in Indiana. And a big hearing today on Capitol Hill for Gina Haspel, Donald Trump's beleaguered nominee to be the new head of the CIA. Lots of news happening on lots of fronts, and we want to hear from you what you think about it all. Of course, send us your comments on Twitter, as always, at BP Show, as we join you everywhere in this great land of ours, reaching out to you from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Okay, get ready to go with all the big news of the day. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Yesterday, Disney had a call with its investors to talk about how much money it has made. And, buddy, it is a lot. They saw $2.45 billion in revenue for the quarter. Now, why would it be so big? Well, they pointed directly to the success of the Black Panther. The Black Panther movie, which all the Marvel movies are owned by Disney, it exceeded expectations by so much that they saw a 21% gain in revenues in year over year because of the success of specifically Black Panther, but also all the Marvel movies. They pointed out that the top 10 biggest domestic box office openings of all time, 9 of them Disney owned, and all of those came out within the last 6 years.
Wow.
So, bottom line is they're doing okay. They're doing okay out there.
you know, you look at it, Disney's a really good company. They've had a great run.
Yeah.
Look at Apple. Look at Amazon. I mean,
Yeah.
There's some companies. They've exceeded the old Fortune 500 manufacturing kind of style.
It's sort of an old school thing. You got to spend money to make money. They bought up, they bought Star Wars, they bought the Marvel stuff, and they're just buying these blockbuster companies. And
it used to be you'd buy like DuPont or you buy General Electric. Not today.
No.
New technology, baby.
How you feeling today, Bill? You feeling all right?
I'm feeling great.
Do you feel a little anxious?
No.
Do you feel a little anxious?
Yeah, over the Iran deal. Right.
Okay, all right. Well, you're not alone. A new survey from the American Psychiatric Association reveals that 39% of Americans feel more anxious now than they did a year ago. And I got to tell you, a year ago, we were all feeling pretty damn anxious.
Yeah.
39% of us are feeling more anxious now. That's more than double the 19% of Americans who feel less
that
anxious
idiot's
now.
still around.
That's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. So just everybody ease up a little bit. And we go to Greenville, South Carolina, because high school graduation season is upon us. But one thing you can't do in Greenville, especially at Greenville High School, is cheer when your child or your relative or your friend, whoever it is, crosses the stage. They are going to fine you $1,000 if you disrupt the graduation ceremony to cheer.
But
when someone
people always do that. Families always cheer when their kid walks by on the stage.
They've asked for people to reserve their applause until the end.
Oh, come on.
And if you don't, you could get fined $1,000.
They'll never enforce that.
I don't think so.
Ridiculous.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Yeah, how about it? Donald Trump says the UK, France, Germany, China, and Russia are all wrong, and I am right. What an idiot. What he did yesterday, withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal. Hello, everybody. On a Wednesday, May 9, this is the Bill Press Show. Great to see you today. And we thank you so much for joining us with lots and lots to talk about, lots you're going to want to dig into. We got it covered here in Washington, D.C. is where we start out, our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we reach out to you and join you wherever you are in the United States of America, coast to coast, every corner of this great country of ours, and also joining you around the globe. Those of you Americans living abroad, traveling abroad, serving our country abroad in the military, or those of you not Americans who just want to know what's going on. Welcome, everybody, to this Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show. Joining you online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Another reminder about the podcast. It's always up. Well, shortly. It's always up, but the new one every day, right after the show. Go to our website, BillPressShow.com. Sign up, become a member of the team. Therefore, then you get our regular updates, not only every day during the day, but on weekends as well. Stuff you don't see or hear on the regular show. We're joining you on television as well on Free Speech TV, part of the DirecTV network, of course, and on the radio, Indiana, big primary yesterday on Indiana Talk statewide and out in the great state of Illinois. The greater Chicago area on the Progressive Voice of Chicago, WCPT. Lots going on today with a great lineup of guests. Dara will be joining us from Vox to cover all the latest on Jeff Sessions, Department of Justice, and immigration, breaking up families at the border. Our own foreign policy guru, nobody knows it better. What a day, a great day to have him in, Joe Cirincione, to talk about the Iran deal and the surprise visit, yet again, of Mike Pompeo in North Korea as we speak, negotiating the release of 3 Americans from prison in North Korea as a prelude to the big talks between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump sometime late this month or early next month. We still don't know yet. And there's a new organization to try to get a new justice on this, get ready, right, to get a new justice or maybe 2 on the Supreme Court. Brian Fallon, former press secretary for Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, leads up that organization. He'll be joining us well. So we've got a great roster of guests today and a great set of issues to talk about. Let's take a quick look at the primaries yesterday before we get into the Iran nuclear deal. Maybe the one that got the most attention, of course, was in West Virginia. We know who the Democratic candidate for Senate is going to be, incumbent senator, Democratic senator, former governor of West Virginia, Joe Manchin. A right-of-center Democrat, but fits that state of West Virginia. The question was, who was going to run against him? For a while, the front-runner was Don Blankenship, former head of Massey Energy, who violated so many federal safety regulations openly at Massey Energy, which resulted in an explosion that killed 29 miners, that he actually went to jail for that. Served his time, came out, he's still on probation, and he decides he's going to run for the Senate, and he ran for the Senate basically for Donald Trump and against Mitch McConnell. Don Blankenship, Republicans feared might be the nominee. We were hoping he would be the nominee. He didn't quite make it. Actually, he came in third. Pretty miserable performance on the part of Don Blankenship. And he says last night, he said he'd understand it. I mean, man, he got close to Trump, but didn't help.
We were in exact concert with what has made Trump 84 to 87% positive and lost this election badly.
Right. And as far as Mitch McConnell, his arch enemy, Mitch McConnell, he says, is no better than Joe Manchin.
Mitch McConnell is a quintessential politician, like Joe Manchin. They move with wherever the winds are flowing, and they don't do anything to take care of the country.
I was reading
Cocaine Mitch.
Cocaine Mitch, that's right.
Mitch. Mm-hmm.
I was reading Politico last night, and they think they summed it up just perfectly as the exit polling stuff started to come out. They just framed it as Blankenship versus McConnell. That's really what the race was about.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. It was in many ways a replay of Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, and in Alabama, though, McConnell's guy lost, and the enemy of McConnell ended up on the ballot, Roy Moore, who, of course, eventually lost to Doug Jones. Again, Don Blankenship, he just mumbles so much. I just love hearing him. Here's what happens is that the bigger the liar, the bigger the winner.
The best liars win these elections, and we forget when they get elected that they're in the government. So you got to be really careful, because people will say anything to get elected in these campaigns, and that's one reason that I probably not very good at this game.
Yeah, the best liars win. Yeah, look who's in the White House, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. You got that right, Don Blankenship. Well, who's to blame? Who do you blame for your loss?
Soccer moms, people that have to get up every morning and go to work, people that maybe are focused on church or community activities. They really don't have the time to invest in understanding the issues and who's representing those issues.
Oh, yeah. Those soccer moms, man. Yeah. They killed Don Blankenship.
They just don't understand the issues, Bill.
Yeah, right. They understood that the felon, right, who of all things ran a very unsafe working place and forgot to put refused to put the proper protections in place and cost the life of 29 minors and the incredible devastation to those communities and to their families, that he didn't belong in the United States Senate. So you got to say the Republicans did the right thing. There's Patrick Morrisey, the Attorney General of West Virginia, who will go up against the very popular former governor and senator Joe Manchin. In Ohio, that was the other really big one. Dennis Kucinich trying to make a comeback. He had the endorsement of the Bernie Sanders group, Our Revolution. Kucinich didn't do very, very well. In fact, Richard Cordray, former head of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, who resigned because he didn't like the direction Donald Trump wanted to take the agency, which
Donald
is
Trump
basically
didn't want to take it in a direction at all.
Basically, Donald Trump wanted to cut the agency, get rid of the agency. So Cordray quit, and he went off to run for governor of Ohio with the support of Senator Elizabeth Warren, whose idea it was to create the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Kucinich got 22%, Cordray 62%.
Not exactly a nail-biter.
Not exactly a nail-biter, but Dennis Kucinich congratulating Cordray.
I contacted Richard Cordray, and I congratulated him on his election.
And Cordray says, there's a little interview with ABC. Here are the issues we're going to be talking about.
We're going to be focused on the kitchen table issues, access to affordable health care, better education and training for our kids, and also spreading out economic opportunity across the state. A lot of people feel left out and left behind.
Cordray says he will be up against, by the way, a former U.S. Senator, Mike DeWine, now Attorney General of Ohio. And Cordray's got his sights on DeWine from the very beginning.
Mike DeWine has been serving those at the top, enabling powerful interests to have their way in Washington and now in Columbus. Instead of being an advocate, he let Ohioans be taken advantage of for too long, costing us too much and undermining our future.
There we go for Ohio. In Indiana, interesting primary. Mike Braun, I should say, an outsider, never having run for office before, put a lot of his own money up, and he beat two Republican members of Congress who were vying for the Republican nomination for Senate there. Mike Braun winning. He will be up against Joe Donnelly, Democrat from Indiana, in the fall. Oh, back to Ohio for just a second. Sherrod Brown, up for re-election, the great Sherrod Brown, one of the strongest progressives and most outstanding members of the U.S. Senate. He has always been a prime target, particularly the Koch brothers. They hate Sherrod Brown. They poured all kind of money into Ohio the last time to try to stop Sherrod Brown and failed. Sherrod Brown has been our guest many times here on the program. He will be up, Sherrod Brown, this time. The winner of the Republican primary yesterday, not unexpected, Jim Renacci. Donald Trump went out to Ohio a weekend or so ago, campaigning for Bernanke, endorsed him, and that did the trick. There was one other interesting race, which is down in North Carolina. An incumbent Republican, Robert Pettinger, was knocked out by an outsider. Pettinger was a Trumper. This guy was just a real anti-establishment Republican, if you will, a guy named Mark Harris, which puts that seat in jeopardy, and it's a possible pickup seat now for Democrats. So some interesting stuff on the political front yesterday, and lining up some interesting races for the fall. We're into it, man. We're into the midterms. This is it.
One of the takeaways, I think, is, right, like when you talk about Pettinger, who was an anti-establishment Trump guy, you look at Blankenship, who was an anti-establishment Trump guy, even though Trump didn't really support him. He claims to be Trumpier than Trump.
Yeah.
Even Dennis Kucinich, who's an anti-establishment guy. I think that people are craving normal, like politicians, people who take this seriously, who can point to a history of public service, whether it's Republican or Democrat, frankly.
Yeah.
And this is something that we've said since Donald Trump was elected. Some of these guys are running like Trump at their peril, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they are going to try and run as Donald Trump. And they're going to lose, So,
by the way, there was an interesting, not a primary in California, but big debate last night. There are, let me see, John Chang, Delane Easton, Gavin Newsom, at least 4 Democratic candidates for governor, and John Chang, Delane Easton, Gavin Newsom, and Antonio Villaraigosa. And now there are 2 Republican candidates for governor. And, the way it works in California, the top 2 vote getters are on the ballot. So it could be, and looks like it will be, just 2 Democrats on the ballot in November for governor, no Republican. But all 6 of them lined up last night for a debate in San Jose. It's interesting also, too, the 2 Republicans, John Cox is one, I forget the name of the other, neither one of them got the endorsement of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has not endorsed a candidate for governor because I think they feel,
why bother?
Why bother, right? And they're probably not going to end up on the ballot either. But one of the issues, this is the Me Too movement, and the 2 frontrunners, Gavin Newsom and Antonio Villaraigosa, both have a history of extramarital affairs, known, public, admitted extramarital affairs. With Gavin Newsom, it was with his best friend's wife, his campaign manager's wife, and Antonio Villaraigosa, it was with a TV anchor in Los Angeles, but they both fessed up last night. So the other candidates raised the issue of character, and both Antonio and Gavin, both of whom are friends of mine, fessed up and said, yeah, we did it. It was wrong, and we apologized, and moved on. Here's Antonio, former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa.
I also acknowledge that I made a mistake. I lost my marriage. I lost my family for a time. I took responsibility for it.
And Gavin Newsom, sort of the same.
I was honest about it. I was open about it. I apologized for it. I was wrong.
I was wrong. Gavin Newsom also said when one of the Republicans, who is a Trumper, raised this issue about Gavin, Gavin said, it's a little cheeky for you, a supporter of Donald Trump, to be raising the issue of infidelity with me. Stormy Daniels, can you spell it? Yeah.
That's fair.
It was fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the best line of the night. And the biggest news of the day yesterday, disastrous news, and so glad we're going to be talking to Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund a little bit later, because we've talked to him a lot about the consequences of pulling out the Iran deal. Well, Donald Trump did it yesterday. Those of you who joined us yesterday, we thought that there were 3 ways of going, either staying in the deal, which was not going to happen, or getting completely out of the deal, or trying to find some middle ground where we're sort of going to pull out, but not quite. We're going to continue to work at it. No, Donald Trump did the whole thing. Pulled the plug all the way in that address in the diplomatic room of the White House yesterday. let's hear Donald Trump. But first of all, you just got to say, this is monumentally insane and frighteningly dangerous, what he did. And I mean, if you thought that Donald Trump was just some sort of a aberration, right, that this is just some sort of heavily tweeting clown, crude, obnoxious, ignorant, that we kind of got to put up with for a few years, but he won't do that much damage. Boy, you got to change your mind after yesterday. This is a man who can take this planet to nuclear war in a second, and he came very close to doing so yesterday. He is a dangerous, dangerous, ignorant man, has no idea what he's doing, and he proved it yesterday by, I mean, the essence of it is, and this is so similar to the Paris Agreement, where in the Paris Agreement, get this, right? We are the only country on the planet that does not, that has not joined and signed up with the Paris Agreement. We did once, but pulled out. As of today, we're the only country on the planet that is not part of a worldwide effort to try to reduce the impact of climate change and to save the planet. I mean, like Donald Trump. Everybody else is over here. Donald Trump over here. And on this Iran nuclear deal, it's the same thing, okay? You've got Germany and France and the UK, our allies, and Russia and China all saying this deal may not be perfect, but it's really important, and we got to stick to it. All of this, and over here, Donald Trump. And in each case, he said, I know more than you do. I'm smarter than you are. And, by the way, I can make a better deal. So he said, we're going to pull out of Paris, but we're going to come up with a better deal. Where is it? It's absolutely a big freaking lie for Donald Trump to say that. He had no intention of coming up with some alternative, no plan B. What did he say yesterday about Iran? Same thing. We're going to get out of this deal, but I'm going to make a better deal. No, he's not. No, he's not. It's the same. He's just a con artist, right? He's a snake oil salesman. It's exactly what he said about Paris. And he is just alienating everybody on the planet and isolating the United States and freeing Iran up to go back into its nuclear weapons program, which at one time it was pursuing. At any rate, here he is yesterday in the diplomatic room making the big announcement.
In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
And, of course, he says, right, what that means is sanctions go back on Iran. But listen carefully, not just Iran.
We will be instituting the highest level of economic sanction. Any nation that helps Iran in its quest for nuclear weapons could also be strongly sanctioned by the United States.
Right. So that's one of the consequences of putting the sanctions back on Iran. He said it's not just on Iran. It's on any country that's doing business with Iran, which he will argue is helping them resume their nuclear weapons program, all right, which is not maybe not directly, but just doing business with them. And that means we could be, take him literally, we could be imposing sanctions not just on Iran, but on France and on Germany and the UK, who have resumed doing some kind of business with Iran in the last 3 years since this agreement was signed. So he's not just declaring war on Iran, he's declaring war on our oldest and strongest allies in Europe. And again, Donald Trump making this phony promise about, you just watch. They're going to come crawling to us, begging for a new deal.
They are going to want to make a new and lasting deal, one that benefits all of Iran and the Iranian people. When they do, I am ready, willing, and able.
I mean, does anybody believe that?
No.
I mean, right. I can just see, here are the mullahs. They're all lining up at the gate of the White House, coming in. Oh, please, Donald. Oh, please, give us a new deal. Oh, please, we really want a new deal. Please, Donald. Oh, yeah, come on. It's not going to happen. Why would anybody believe anything that this idiot says? And, right, he can't help but, once again, just like he did all during the campaign, trash this deal, the old deal.
The agreement was so poorly negotiated that even if Iran fully complies, the regime can still be on the verge of a nuclear breakout in just a short period of time.
There's so many things wrong with this deal. And again, we'll talk about it in a lot more detail with Joe Cirincione when he gets here just about a half an hour from now. But, I mean, just going down a few of the items. As I mentioned, Donald Trump, by doing this, rejects the advice of all of our allies. And I was there at the White House when Emmanuel Macron stood right alongside of Donald Trump, and Macron made the very, very persuasive argument that even a kindergarten kid could understand. Look, of course this isn't a perfect deal. We recognize that. But what makes more sense is to remain in this deal and then work on the other issues that we do care about with Iran. But at least not scrap this deal, because of all those other issues, and there are a lot of them: Iran's support of terrorist some organizations, Iran's involvement in Syria, Iran's involvement in Yemen, whatever, those other issues, right? Those are very important issues. But what they did with this Iran nuclear deal is they looked at all of them and said, what's the number one most serious threat? The number one most serious threat is that Iran looks like it's got all the makings of making a nuclear bomb and really developing a nuclear arsenal. Let's deal with that one, the most serious threat, and take care of that one, and then we'll get to all the rest of these. And that's what the Iran nuclear deal did. And they got rid of their centrifuges, and they put their nuclear weapons program on hold, impossible to pick up again for at least 15 years. That was the strength of this deal. So for Donald Trump to reject all of our allies and do that is just really senseless and, again, dangerous. And again, and the other thing that's wrong with it is, again, there's no plan B. No plan B. They don't. What happens now? Donald Trump doesn't know. John Bolton doesn't know. Mike Pompeo doesn't know. Nobody knows. I mean, Iran could now, with our pulling out, the deal is done. It's over. There ain't no deal. Iran could, tomorrow, order more centrifuges and start down the path to building nuclear weapons again. And by the way, were they living up to the deal? Absolutely. It was just about within the last 2 weeks that Dan Coates, who's the director of national intelligence, and Mike Pompeo, who was then the director of the CIA and is now the new Secretary of State, both of them in front of Congress said there was, get this is very important, zero evidence that Iran was in violation of this nuclear deal, and all kinds of evidence that Iran was complying with the nuclear deal. So this deal, they were in compliance with it, and yet Donald Trump just ripped it up yesterday. Again, our intelligence agencies, Dan Coates, Director of National Intelligence, Mike Pompeo, now Secretary of State, both disagree with Donald Trump, publicly disagree with the president, saying Iran was not cheating on this deal. Nevertheless, Donald Trump ripped it up. And you know the number, let's just be honest, the number one reason, because this is a deal made by Barack Obama. That is the only thing that drives the Trump train. That's why he ripped up the Paris Accords. That's why he ripped up the TPP. And that's why he's now ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. But the consequences of this are more serious than anything else. And it just makes you wonder again how we can survive. But again, if you think this is It's just a kind of an embarrassing sort of moment we got to get through. This guy is dangerous, and what he did yesterday is his most serious foreign policy decision, certainly so far. Just one quick little note before we take a break. The Washington Post points out that just outside of Vienna, there's a little cluster of buildings where there are scientists that work, and what they are doing is every day they go there and they have all these cameras that are in Iran's nuclear labs all over Iran. Everyone, and these scientists are there every day monitoring everything that's going on. They have equipment there that monitors everything that goes in and out of all these facilities. This is how they know that Iran's in compliance, right? That entire operation, of course, is going to be shut down today. And so we will not know what's going on. Right now, we know every minute, everything that's going on everywhere in Iran that has anything to do with nuclear power. All of that. And today, it's all shut down because...
That's amazing.
Yeah, right. So all those eyes and ears that we have inside of Iran as to what's going on, which Iran agreed to, and every once in a while those inspectors actually go on site, right? But in the meantime, they've got these monitors bigger than NSA monitoring everything. It's all gone today because of Donald Trump. One man. What damage one man can do. Dara Lynn joins us next. Jeff Sessions on the warpath for Donald Trump kind of got buried in all the rest of the news about Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels and Iran. But it's very, very important. We'll get back to that when we come back. Take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. But we'll be right back on this Wednesday, May 9.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go on a Wednesday, May 9. How about it? Great to have you with us today. It is The Bill Press Show. We are live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., joining you with all the help of the members of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, the UFCW members under President Mark Perrone, a proud union family that feeds, serves, and provides for America's hardworking families. Check out their website at ufcw.org. Thank them for their support and their good work across the country. And a little reminder that my new book, From the Left, A Life in the Crossfire, is out with endorsements from Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Brown, Rosa DeLauro, Maxine Waters, even Tucker Carlson, Joe Scarborough, Anderson Cooper, and, of course, Bernie Sanders. Check it out at our website at BillPressShow.com. Joining us in studio, Dara Lynn covers immigration issues for Vox, and it's good to have you back in studio. Nice to see you.
Great to be on.
Go Nats. They're sort of in a little roll these days.
Oh, man.
After a slump. But what they do?
They started out not great, man. I was really worried.
They started out good, and then they slumped.
Yeah.
Everybody's injured.
But
I could talk about this for the next half hour,
Same.
believe me.
Okay. But they won about 7 in a row, right?
Yeah, they're like 9-1 now. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great. And we're going to have everybody come back healthy. It'll be great.
All right. Okay. Very good. Dara, we've been at it for a little bit here, stirring up some comments. Peter?
Yes, indeed. We're on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show. Catching up on some comments from yesterday because we talked about Orrin Hatch saying that John McCain should allow Donald Trump at his funeral. Susan Shepard, and we talked about John McCain, talking about the regrets he's had, including Sarah Palin. Susan Shepard says, I wonder how many of McCain's 4 Navy plane crashes he regrets. Wow. It's awfully Trumpian of one of our commenters.
Yeah.
Also this morning, about the Iran deal, Terry says there is and always has been a plan B, Bill. Plan B is actually war.
Oh,
you didn't really think about that. It's not very, doesn't really help me feel much better.
I would hope plan B would be impeachment, but anyhow.
There's that. KG says, Trump pulling out of the Iran deal makes me sick to my stomach. The U.S. is not doing any, the United States not doing anything about it makes me furious. If you have a comment, find us on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show.
I didn't mention that yesterday we were saying we hadn't heard anything from Barack Obama about this, which is true. We didn't until yesterday when it happened. He did lament it and say it was a serious, serious mistake, which it was. Attorney General Jeff Sessions out in, it's on the West Coast somewhere.
San Diego.
San Diego. Yesterday or the day before, and he seems to be, the avenger, right? I mean, he's the avenging angel for Donald Trump on immigration, and he told people out there, "Yep, I'm on fire, and so is Donald Trump."
The president has made clear he's on fire about this thing. He's not happy about it, and I think the entire government's getting the message.
He says, man, there are so many people here now already. We don't need any more immigrants, period.
11 million people are here already, illegally. That's more than the population of Portugal or Georgia.
Yeah, get the whole population of
Portugal or Georgia.
Georgia, yeah. And are we mean enough to break up families? Damn right we are.
If you're smuggling a child, then we're going to prosecute you. And that child will be separated from you probably as required by law. If you don't want your child to be separated, then don't bring him across the border illegally. It's not our fault.
Not our fault. What's going on here?
So this is kind of the completion of a policy that Sessions announced a few weeks ago, that they are going to start prosecuting in criminal court everybody who crosses the border illegally. So that's if you present yourself for asylum at a port of entry, like at the San Ysidro border crossing, like the caravan did a few weeks ago, that's legal. They are not doing anything about that officially. But if you go cross the border and then present yourself to a Border Patrol agent, you've crossed the border illegally. Even if you present yourself for asylum, you will get prosecuted for illegal entry, which is a federal misdemeanor. And if you're coming as a family, then they will take the parent, prosecute the parent, put the parent in criminal detention, and treat the child as a quote-unquote unaccompanied minor, which is the same thing they do for kids who come across without adults who are under 18. Those are sent to the custody of Health and Human Services.
And what happens to those kids?
In theory, they are placed with relatives or other sponsors, or they are kept in, Health and Human Services custody until a sponsor is found. In practice, the officials have admitted that they've lost track of about 1,500 minors over the last year and a half. And
what are we
there
talking
have been
about?
cases of like some of those
3-year-olds or 10-year-olds?
There's a lot of these are teenagers. So in cases where there have been some cases of like actual labor trafficking, but those we're talking about, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. But it's still not a great look, to say the least, that this arm of the federal government has been overloaded for a really long time, and that the federal government is now putting more kids into the situation who have parents who, are elsewhere in the system. What DHS has told me is that they are going to make sure that once parents have been convicted and have served the sentence for illegal entry, which is a pretty short sentence, it's 6 months maximum, and often a lot shorter than that. Once that sentence is over, they'll make sure that the kids are reunited with the parents in custody. But that assumes that they know where the kids are. And again, this is a totally different government department.
Let's talk about numbers. I mean, you get the impression, listening to Sessions, that there's a flood of people crossing the border illegally, like there was maybe back in the 90s. What's the truth?
There's such a huge difference between the number of people who are crossing now and the number of people who have crossed historically. The 90s or even straight through 2006. We've got something like, a third as many people as have come through historically, half as many people as have come through, as came through under the Bush administration. They sent the National Guard to the border with a fraction as many people as Bush or Obama had when they sent the National Guard to the border under their presidencies. The difference is that because a lot of that change has been in adults coming across independently, that's been a pretty elastic population. That's way down. So a greater share of those who remain are children and families, especially from Central America and especially seeking asylum. And it's not very easy for the government to deter those people from coming because they're seeking asylum. They're often, in lethal peril in their home countries. So they've had to adopt these kind of extra policies of mandatory detention. They can't just prevent people from coming and can't return them immediately because that would violate international law. They have to do these other things to send the message that you're not going to get favorable treatment if you come to the U.S.
Do some of these people seek asylum in Mexico or any other countries? But I'm just thinking Mexico because that's certainly a lot closer than the United States.
So this is a regional problem. Asylum seeking throughout the region has increased. And we're not even talking about the massive asylum problem, the refugee problem in Venezuela, which is really overwhelming neighboring countries and which makes the reaction up in the U.S. to Central America look a little bit skewed. But the problem with Mexico is, Mexico's treatment of Central American migrants is extremely questionable. There have been lots of international reports of human rights abuses, of widespread torture or prevalent torture and rape of Central American migrants who get apprehended. And while Mexico's asylum laws are theoretically more generous than the United States, in practice, that doesn't always pan out. So you're dealing with both the kind of questionable safety of living in Mexico, some parts of which do have extremely high crime rates and where people could be under threat, and the idea of putting yourself at the mercy of a Mexican government that hasn't always been inclined to show it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about Sessions. He does seem to have taken this on as his mission. It's almost as if we know how much Donald Trump doesn't like him and keeps tweeting about how weak he is and everything. The Sessions almost is like it looks like he's out there trying to prove how tough he is, right? He's chosen this as the one issue where he will be Donald Trump's front man on immigration, as tough as he can be.
So Sessions is doing a lot, especially on immigration. I mean, bear in mind, he's doing this at the same time that he's pursuing, his sanctuary lawsuits against California. Yeah. There's a lot of quieter stuff he's doing that actually could have a really, really big impact on the immigration court system, which is the biggest obstacle to deporting people efficiently right now, because ICE is arresting more people, but because most people have to go through immigration court before getting deported, the bottlenecks that have existed in the immigration court system are really becoming a problem. So Sessions is doing some stuff there that could force more people through quickly, and that lawyers are worried could, prevent due process, that isn't getting a lot of attention. This is something where I think he's noticed that the president really cares about it. Donald Trump saw the caravan news, freaked out about the caravan news. Like Sessions said, he's on fire about it. So Sessions sees this, convenient Venn diagram nexus between the things he can actually accomplish as Attorney General and the things that Donald Trump cares about. A lot of the things Donald Trump wishes Jeff Sessions could do as Attorney General, Jeff Sessions legally cannot do. And to see something where Sessions is already, he already understands what can be done to crack down on immigration, to kind of take that opportunity. He's doing a lot of public speeches about it, I think, in the understanding that this is something that if the boss sees him on television, the boss will say, he's doing a good job. Right.
Okay. So we've talked about people who are coming here now with their and a lot of them family members coming, seeking asylum or coming across illegally. But you've been writing about, and the Washington Post has a big story about this morning too, where the United States has been deporting some 300,000 people.
They're not deporting them yet. They're stripping legal status from them over the next 18 months.
These
so
are
that
people
they could
from
be deported.
Honduras, from
El Salvador is the biggest.
Right.
Honduras and Haiti both have about 50,000 people apiece. They've also stripped status.
Now, these are people who came here who were given asylum at one time, right?
Well, it's temporary protected status, which is a different thing. And this is why it's gotten so... it's the Trump administration and the critics are talking past each other on this one, because temporary protected status is ostensibly given after like a natural disaster. Like in the case of Honduras, it was given after Hurricane Mitch in 1998. The administration...
And
Haiti was after the earthquake in 2010.
Right. Yeah.
El Salvador was after a hurricane in like 2001, I think. But there's, in all those cases, ostensibly those are natural disasters. So it's not really accurate to say that Honduras has not recovered from a 1998 hurricane. The problem is that doesn't make Honduras a safe place to return to. So a bunch of presidents have just kind of quietly kicked the can down the road on this one. These people can't apply for more permanent legal status unless they otherwise qualify for it. So they've just been in this limbo state. And Donald Trump has said, well, that's not our problem. The reason we gave you status doesn't exist anymore. So we're gonna strip your work permits, strip your protection from deportation. You can apply for one last work permit for 18 months. These are all these staggered things. So right now...
How many people are we talking about?
About 300,000. I would say 350,000. We don't have great numbers on this.
Total from all these countries.
Yes, because mostly from these three.
How many years?
By definition, you have to have been in the country before the reason that TPS was granted. So in the case of Honduras, we're talking about people who have been here by definition for 20 years. Many of them have been here longer than that, although not a ton. So all of these are people who have been in the country for decades, working legally. Large percentage
so
of
they've
them
got
homes.
They have work permits.
Mm-hmm.
They have jobs.
Yep.
They have families. They're members of the community.
Yeah.
Right. And Donald Trump wants to round them all up.
Well, this is where it gets tricky.
And deport them?
if you think about it, there are 11 million people in the U.S. without papers. Not all of them are getting rounded up at any given time. The Trump administration kind of officially refuses to admit that if you have a work permit now and lose it in the future, that you won't necessarily just leave the country the next day. They are definitely treating it as if everyone's going to get on a plane and go. That's not true. A lot of these people will probably make the decision to stay in the U.S. and live as unauthorized immigrants. And we don't yet know how much effort the Trump administration is going to put into deporting them. But again, they can't deport people super efficiently right now.
I guess what I'm getting to, what's the threat? What's the risk? What's the danger? Why is this a...
Oh, the danger that they pose. Well, okay, so there are a couple different arguments being made.
We're not talking about people, 300,000 committing violent crimes, right?
Right. So
we're talking probably 99.99999% of them who are contributing members of the society.
So philosophically, the Trump administration really doesn't like parts of the immigration system that don't mean the government is selecting you as an individual to come to the U.S. And in the case of TPS, definitionally, that's not the case because all of these people were either in the U.S. on temporary visas or were unauthorized. So they don't look like the kind of merit-based immigrants that Trump wants, even if you take the kind of racial implications of that out.
I was going to say, maybe it has to do with the color of their skin.
I'm not...
We need more people here from Sweden.
I am not going to go there, but they don't
he went
have
there.
Donald
Trump went there.
Right, so this kind of is relevant because during the famous shithole countries meeting, one of the provisions of that deal was, wow, we have all of these people with temporary status who can't get green cards.
Yeah.
Maybe we should allow them to get green cards. Donald Trump soured on that provision when he found out that Haiti was on the list. He said, we don't need any more people from Haiti, send them back, which, we don't need any more people from Haiti doesn't really understand that these people are already in the U.S. But, to give the kind of most sympathetic read here, these aren't people who have high levels of education. They are making, below average salary. In a world where the Trump administration's argument is more of our immigrants should be making more money than the average American, not less, and they should be more educated, and they should be entirely fluent in English as opposed to just speaking some English. These people don't fit that picture. But there's also the letter of the law argument.
Whoa. But that is a racist, artificial picture that the Trump administration has put up there, right? Basically saying, we don't want you to come here unless you can already speak English. We don't want you to come here unless you already are a millionaire. And we don't want you to come here unless you already have a doctorate. That's not what immigration.
I'm just presenting it.
But I'm saying, that's what they hide behind. But it's just outrageous, and it is racist, fundamentally racist.
There's also temporary protected status is one of those things where no one agrees it works perfectly well. Absolutely no one was out there saying, oh, yeah, this obviously counts as Hurricane Mitch is the reason that Honduras' homicide rate is among the highest in the world. There's a disconnect between the political willingness to actually admit what the letter of the law was and the letter of the law. And Trump is going, well, we have the letter of the law. The problem is that Congress, which used to back, in the 20th century would often do these little changes to law that would benefit various countries' populations, hasn't been able to do anything on immigration for a very long time. So the executive branch was just kind of in the position of saying, well, no one really wants these people to leave, so we're going to extend their temporary status. So I think it's less that the Trump administration is, violating the letter of the policy than that this policy hasn't been functioning for a while.
My take on it is pretty simple. I think Donald Trump realizes that immigration is the one issue where he can keep his base happy as long as he just is as hard-ass as he can on immigration and doesn't give an inch, and then his base will be happy. And so he can go off and have as many affairs with prostitutes as he wants and pay them as much money as he wants and lie about it, but as long as he's a hard-ass on immigration.
But
I do want to ask you
about this. His base absolutely cares about Jeff Sessions giving speeches at the border and about being tough at the border. I don't see conservative media being like, yeah, we're kicking 300,000 people out of the country. That's not something that's getting attention. I don't disagree with you. You know, maybe if they found out about it, his base would be super happy. But it's always fascinating to me when the president is doing hardline things on immigration that aren't getting oxygen among the people you think would be celebrating them. That says to me there's something more complicated going on.
What's happening with the Dreamers? What is the present status of the Dreamers? You know, here's a program, by the way, I would argue, where Donald Trump at one point said, I love the Dreamers. We're going to take care of the Dreamers. Don't worry. You know, but then those people around him, like John Kelly, said, no, you piss off your base if you do anything good for the Dreamers. And so Trump walked away from it. But what is the present status? We haven't heard about the Dreamers for a month, at least.
So there's the current status is basically tied up in court. Right now, under a court order from January, if you have a work permit under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, you can apply for a 2-year extension of that work permit. Those extensions are being processed.
If you're in, you can.
If you're in, you can.
How about if you're not in?
If you're not in, you are currently out of luck. However, a judge in the District of D.C. Last month, in April, said, I don't think any of this was constitutional. I am giving the Trump administration 90 days to come up with a better reason to end this program. And if they can't, they're going to have to start processing new applications from people who weren't already in but qualify as well. That 90-day deadline expires at the end of July. Meanwhile, in Texas and a bunch of other states finally did what they'd been threatening to do, last year. They pressured the Trump administration to end the DACA program by saying, we're going to sue you because we think it's unconstitutional. The Trump administration tried to end the program, and then the courts held it up. So now we have this bizarre situation where the Texas and a bunch of other red states are suing over suing the Trump administration from the right and trying to get a court to rule that government officials cannot process the exact same applications that other judges are ordering them to process, which, if that happens, is going to be an absolute legal cluster disaster.
Thank you for saying cluster disaster. It's a family show.
I'm stealing that. That's good.
But in the meantime, the Dreamer program does exist, right? Its future certainly is uncertain.
Right.
Donald Trump has been unable to end it.
And what that means is that even if Trump ultimately gets the rulings in the courts that he wants, and they are allowed to stop granting applications, that the end of it, work permits are going to expire later than anybody thought and slower than anybody thought. So it's going to be this quiet, slow death. Right.
Okay. Dara, thanks for bringing us up to date on all these immigration issues. All right. And she does that at Vox, of course, which you can follow at Vox.com. Again, the consequences of Donald Trump's action yesterday. Nobody knows it better than Joe Cirincione. Ploughshares Fund joins us next on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
What would happen if you didn't follow the established path?
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show. live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yes, indeed. Donald Trump gives Iran a green light to start rebuilding nuclear weapons. What do you say, everybody? It is the Bill Press Show on a Wednesday, May 9. Welcome to the program. Great to see you. Always good to have you with us. And today is such an important news day. And we got just the man to tell us all about it here. Joining us in studio for this next half hour, Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund. Hello, Joe.
Good morning, Bill.
It's good to see you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, how about it? We were afraid.
It's a grim day.
We were afraid it would come to this.
Yes.
And here it is. But Joe's going to be with us this half hour to bring us up to date. And what is that Plan B? Yes, that the president has up his sleeve that he had talked about yesterday. That Iran is going to be begging us to undertake. We'll find out all about that. We join you from our studio on Capitol Hill, joining you all across this great land of ours on the radio, on television, and, of course, online. And we invite your comments on Twitter at BP Show. Talk about the Iran deal also a little bit later. We'll get back into what happened with all the in the primaries yesterday and what we can expect from today's hearing in the Senate Intelligence Committee on the confirmation hearing for Gina Haspel as the next director of the CIA. Stay tuned. Send your comments on Twitter at BP Show. Get ready to jump into it with Joe Cirincione. But first, it's Peter Ogburn.
Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Yesterday, Uber had their Uber Elevate Summit, which showcases prototypes for different types of cars that they want to roll out for their ride-sharing service. And the big news is they announced they are going to introduce flying cars. By the way, not only are they going
let's get to the driverless car first.
Well,
and then we get to the flying car.
Well, that's actually part of this.
Oh, is this a flying driverless car?
That's where they're going to go.
Baby.
Let me give you some of the details. So they said that they hope to introduce this to riders within 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years.
BS.
Seems
BS.
Awfully ambitious. And they said that they're going to be skyports, air stations, rooftops, or on the ground. And they said that they're going to be able to take 200 takeoffs and landings an hour, or one every 24 seconds. They look like drones, the prototypes that they showed. They have like 4 rotors. They'll fly 1,000 to 2,000 feet above the ground. They will be piloted at first, and then they plan to roll out driverless flying vehicles.
This is not going to end well.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think you're right.
Let me tell you something. I use Uber a lot. The first time a driverless Uber car pulls up in front of my house, I ain't getting in.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly, if I get out there and there's some little drone hovering and I'm supposed to hop up on it.
Hop on. Let's go 2,000 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Let's talk some sports really quickly. Go to the NBA. Last night, the Western Conference Finals are now set. The Houston Rockets beating the Utah Jazz and the Golden State Warriors beating the New Orleans Pelicans, meaning we will see a showdown, clash of the Titans, the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets, arguably the 2 best teams in the NBA all season. Only one of them can advance to the NBA Finals, so we will see which one of them does it.
When's that, tonight?
It doesn't start tonight. It actually starts in a couple days. I'm not sure when the for game 1 is. But look, the Golden State Warriors have Steph Curry back. They're looking pretty good. So who knows? And we talked yesterday about how the Boy Scouts of America are no longer going to be the Boy Scouts of America. They're dropping the boy. The Mormon Church said yesterday they are ending their 105 relationship with the Boy Scouts of America at the end of next year. They say, quote, that the organization has gone from a U.S.-centered institution to an international organization. So, again, we're talking about globalism in the age of Trump. So, no more Mormons in the Boy Scouts.
That's ridiculous.
Take The Bill Press Show anywhere you go. Download our free podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and catch the highlights from every show.
All right. Yes, indeed. Donald Trump saying France, the UK, Germany, China, Russia, they're all wrong, and I am right. Leaving the United States isolated again on the Iran nuclear deal, like he did on the Paris Accords. Hello, everybody. What do you say? It is Wednesday, May 9. This is the Bill Press Show. That's me, and you are part of it. Nobody more important than all of you, our listeners on WCPT out in Chicago, all of our viewers on Free Speech TV across the country and around the globe, and also all around the globe on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Thanks so much for being with us today as we bring you the news of the day from our studio on Capitol Hill right here in Washington, D.C., with Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund as our guest. Donald Trump is tweeting all over the place today. He is tweeting about the media. I just have to point out this one. Wait a minute here. Come on, I just had it up. Peter, I lost it.
All right, let me pull up, because I think I know which one you're talking about. So Trump tweeted this morning
about the media.
He says the fake news is working overtime.
Right.
Just reported that despite the tremendous success we are having with the economy and all things else, 91% of the network news about me is negative.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we work so hard in working with the media when it is corrupt? Take away credentials? Question mark.
Ooh. Yes, that's the one that comes.
That's
take away credentials.
Take away the credentials.
Right. So if you're part of the White House press corps, like I am, and you write a critical story, well, then you could lose your press credential. How's that?
Yeah, it's a privilege, not a right.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure that's how the First Amendment works, but let him figure that out, I guess. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Again, we say we're not going to play this game, but what if during the Obama years, right, they had said,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. You're here from Fox News? No.
Yeah.
You're no
Christian
longer welcome.
Broadcast Network.
Oh,
out.
yeah. No,
you're gone.
You're out.
Yeah. Free Beacon, done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this was purely like a trolley bait type of tweet, right? Like people are going to get really, really upset about it, and Donald Trump's not going to do anything about it.
All right. It was 2 o'clock.
Working.
Yeah, 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The president stepped in a little shortly after 2, but scheduled for 2, stepping into the diplomatic room. Joe, you and I both heard him and watched him say this. He made the announcement that we knew was coming.
In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
And he said, Joe, that the deal wasn't working, that Iran was in violation of the deal, and the deal actually made America less safe than no deal at all. What's the truth?
This speech was an avalanche of lies. I was trying to keep track of all the falsehoods. In that one sentence, he had 3. In that one sentence, he just packed them in. And it's become an all too familiar pattern, so we've become a little used to this. You know, just a fantasy world, lie upon lie, the complete rejection of the advice of his national security advisors, except for a couple of hand-picked new kids in the White House. Complete disregard for the opinion of our allies, complete disregard for the history of the construction of an anti-nuclear regime in the world. He throws all that aside. He has no plan for what to do next. All he is Susan Rice called him former Ambassador Susan Rice called him in the New York Times today, our commander, our wrecking ball in chief. This is what he does well. He wrecks things. No, there is nothing fatally flawed about the Iran agreement. Iran is not in violation of the agreement. Our own State Department just certified that last week. The International Atomic Energy Agency just certified it again this morning. They're not on the cusp of getting a nuclear weapon. This deal keeps them years away from that possibility, and there's a promise in the deal never to acquire nuclear weapons. No, he did this for personal spite, for revenge, for the same reason he allegedly had prostitutes on a bed in Moscow. He just wants to reign on all things Obama. This was one of Obama's signature foreign policy accomplishments, and he wanted to tear it down the way he tore down his immigration reform, his health care reform, his climate change, his environmental protections. He's out to wreck Obama's legacy. This was much more personal than most people realize.
Right. I mean, I think it's worth underscoring what you said about it was only maybe 10 days ago that now the new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo,
yes.
then the head of the CIA, Dan Coates, the head of our National Intelligence Agency, both told Congress at that same hearing that there is zero evidence that Iran is in noncompliance, meaning there's all kinds of evidence that they are complying with the terms of the agreement.
Yes. This deal worked and is working. They had to rip out 2/3 of their centrifuges, export all their uranium gas. They pulled out the core of their plutonium reactor, drilled it full of holes, and filled it with concrete. They are under the tightest inspection regime ever negotiated. I mean, this thing works. When Trump asked his national security team at the beginning of his administration about this, because this was a campaign promise, to a person, they said, stay in the deal. And so one of the things he did was he started to get rid of some of those persons. Mm-hmm. When he fired Rex Tillerson, you remember his comments on the way to the helicopter was, the Iran deal, we had a different view. He got rid of H.R. McMaster, his national security advisor, because McMaster was in favor of the Iran deal. He brings in Mike Pompeo and John Bolton. And this is where it really gets worrying, because they're not just toadies. They're not just willing to go along with what the president wants. No, they've been advocating this for a long time. Mm-hmm. Not just get rid of the deal, but the way to solve the problem is to go to war with Iran. And that's what has many of us worried. This is just step one in an ambitious campaign to actually do what John Bolton has wanted to do for many years, go to war with one of the largest states in the Middle East.
So is Plan B war?
I think it is, because what they say is Plan B doesn't actually exist. This is a little kind of inside Washington thing. I read the transcript of the State Department backgrounder. This is something that you've done many times in your career, right? And so the reporters go into the State Department and they kind of fill in the gaps. You know,
they usually sometimes they're off the record. Usually they're off the record, but they do that to give reporters more stuff to write about.
Well, today, read any reporter who was there. This was a disaster. The reporters brought their A game. They kept pressing the State Department. Well, what now? What now? And the what now was about one paragraph thin. You know, it was like we were going to do this. They have no plan. They have no idea how to implement the crushing sanctions that the president promised. Just bear with me. The United States does not do business with Iran. Our firms, with a couple of exceptions, don't sell any products to Iran. So you can't sanction American companies. What you have to do is sanction foreign companies, the Europeans, the Japanese, the Chinese. And so this is the big issue. Is that what you're going to do now? You're going to put these so-called secondary sanctions on Europe and China, and of course the State Department didn't have a plan for how that was possibly going to work. They haven't even consulted with the Europeans about this, and so the whole thing starts to fall apart almost immediately. And you realize they don't really have a maximum pressure campaign for Iran. So that makes you suspicious about what is really going on. Are they trying to goad Iran into taking some kind of action that could justify going to war with Iran? And then the plot gets a little more complicated. Clearly, this has all been coordinated with Bibi Netanyahu.
I was just going to raise that. Of course. Yeah, right.
So yesterday, right after the president makes his announcement, Israel conducts more airstrikes on Iranian positions in Syria. Remember, they did this a few days ago, killed 7 Iranians. Yesterday, they killed 5 more Iranians. And Iran admits this. So you realize what's going on here is that conflicts that are already going on with Israel and Iran, with Saudi Arabia and in Yemen, could flare up and could draw the United States into it. Or, if you believe, as I do, that John Bolton wants this, could provide an excuse for the United States to enter into a war that the American public certainly doesn't want.
And of course, Bibi came up yesterday right afterwards and praising the president for taking this action. Right?
There were 3 countries in the world that praised us. Bibi Netanyahu, not by the way his military and intelligence establishment, his own military chief of staff said we should stay in the deal. The Israeli military does not want this fight. Bibi does. So it was Netanyahu in Israel, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. No one else in the world wanted us to do this. Our closest allies lobbied against us. France sent their president, Germany their chancellor, the United Kingdom their foreign minister just on Monday begging the president to stay in the deal. He just blew him off.
Okay, and I was there when the president of France met with Donald Trump at the White House, and they gave their joint news conference. And I thought that Emmanuel Macron made a very, very compelling argument, basically saying, yes, Mr. President, we all agree this is not a perfect deal. But here's a better plan. Let's not rip this one up.
Yes.
Let's kind of keep this one, and then let's add to it and deal with with Iran, with some of these other issues, like what are they doing in Syria? What are they doing with Hezbollah or whatever? Donald Trump stood there, even though he had his earpiece in so he could hear the translation. I don't think he understood a word of what Macron was saying.
No, I doubt very much that Trump has read the deal, has any idea what the deal actually does. And part of this is this careful campaign, and this really gets to the duplicity of many here in Washington, and it helps you understand, how this town operates. They knew that the deal was working, so they couldn't kill it outright. So what they had to do was talk about its flaws, its imperfections. It didn't do this, and they do this elaborate 2-year-long campaign on fixing the deal. Oh, we don't want to kill the deal. We want to fix it. And you have little well-funded think tanks in town, mostly related to AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, things like the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, or a couple of small little think tanks, Institute for Science and International Security. And these groups of experts are saying, well, here's a flaw. We have to fix it. Here's a fix. We have to fix it. The Europeans have to fix the deal. So the Europeans come, and they offer a dozen different fixes. We'll do this. And that's what Macron was doing. He had a plan.
Right. Yeah, right. Very specific.
And Boris Johnson, the conservative foreign minister of the conservative European UK government, they have a plan for how to fix it. Trump isn't interested. No, it was all a sham. It was all a sham just to build up the idea that this is a fatally flawed plan, and then he kills it and does what he wants to do in the beginning.
One of the strongest arguments I heard yesterday, and I forget what I was watching, waiting for the president to speak, was that there are these other issues. And at the time, when John Kerry was negotiating with us and the others, our European allies, they realized, there's this collection of issues with Iran that we all want to deal with. But the number one, most important, is Iran's nuclear weapons program, or potential, right? And so if we can deal with that one, let's do that.
Yes.
And then we'll go back and deal with all the rest of these.
Because the truth is, look, they do a lot of things in the region we don't like. We don't support them ideologically. We don't like what they're doing to their own people. But, there's lots of governments like that. And it's as troubling, but it is not an existential threat to us. What is Iran with a nuclear weapon?
Yeah.
And to our allies.
Right.
So that's the problem you want to fix. And you don't want to mix it up with these other issues, because that gives Iran negotiating leverage. That means that they could demand that you give them more on the nuclear issue in order for, say, a human rights reform or improve our relations with Israel reform. And you don't want to do that. You want maximum leverage in the negotiations, so keep it to that one issue, and that's what worked.
All right. So then yesterday we heard, I thought it was clearly an echo of what we heard when he pulled out of the Paris Accords, that don't worry, there's a new deal right around the bend here, and we don't even have to offer it because they're going to come begging for it. Here's Donald Trump.
They are going to want to make a new and lasting deal, one that benefits all of Iran and the Iranian people. When they do, I am ready, willing, and able.
It sounds so good if you believe him, right?
It's a complete lie.
Yeah.
There's not a chance in hell that that's going to happen.
Right. That these mullahs are going to line up in front of the White House saying, please, Donnie, give us a new deal. I mean, yeah. The New York Times lead editorial today on the opinion page. Where is that better deal?
Yes.
They're talking about Paris. He made the same promise with Paris. We're going to tear up Paris, but we're going to have a better deal, and we're going to put together. That was a year and a half ago. Where is it?
And with TPP and with DACA.
Yes.
And, don't worry, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm the deal maker.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's
so there won't be a better deal. There won't be another deal. What is going to happen now? What is Iran going to do?
What Trump is very good at is creating chaos. And, some people think this is actually a theory that he has, that he thrives in chaos, that this works for him, and there might be some truth to that. So he's destroyed this institution. There's something, by the way, the Europeans have been working on this deal since 2003. So this is one of the crowning achievements of European diplomacy, and Trump, in a fitted peak, has just smashed it. So,
but has he? Does it really?
So here's the.
So can it exist without the
yes. U.S.? It's like the climate change accord. So we pull out, which we've now done. This is a complete withdrawal. This was a harder decision than most people thought. We thought they was going to give us Europeans some wiggle room to negotiate a final fix, but no, completely pull it. Right. So the deal is still there. So yesterday the Europeans were meeting with the Iranians, and the Iranian President Rouhani was ready at the mic. It was midnight in Tehran, but he was ready to go. And he said, we'd like to stay in the deal if we can get the benefits that the deal offers us. Now, remember, this is a deal where they gave up most of their nuclear program and agreed to these restrictions in exchange for economic benefits. So the Iranians saying, okay, can Europe, Russia, China give us these economic benefits? And that's what the Europeans are going to try and do. It's going to be tough, though.
But the president, and you pointed out, in his sanctions, he said basically we're going to apply these sanctions, if he follows through with that, to any country that's doing business with Iran.
Exactly. So now you've set up a clash not between the United States and Iran, but between the United States and Europe, between the United States and China. Because they're going to say, we're going to continue to do business, and the president's going to say, then we're going to sanction your banks, we're going to sanction your oil companies. And so that's a situation, a recipe for chaos.
We're going to, just imagine. We're going to put sanctions on Germany and France and the UK?
Yes. And in order for them to avoid that, those countries are going to have to pass new laws, new regulations, shielding their companies from the United States. So that's the dynamic that starts to open up. I have my doubts that any of that can work, so I think the deal is going to fall apart. But it's possible, and that's what you're going to see diplomats working on for the next couple of months.
And if Iran wanted to, right?
Yes.
If they wanted to, he has given them a green light to resume a nuclear weapons program.
Right. See, this is, in some ways,
hasn't he?
For the hardliners in Iran, this is the best of all possible worlds. This is what they never liked the agreement. They didn't want to make a deal with America.
Right.
The Ayatollah said you can't trust these people, and he's proven to be right. So now Trump is giving them a get out of the deal free card. They can leave the deal without any penalties. They could kick out the inspectors, and they've said they might do this. They restart their uranium enrichment program, not all at once, not a sprint for the bomb, not something that would give Israel or the United States a reason to strike, but little by little. 100 centrifuges here, we're going to enrich to a little higher level there, and just as they did from 2003 until 2013, when we stopped it with the negotiations. You do it gradually, but you do it steadily, and you get to the point where you could sprint for a bomb in a couple of months.
So you and I exchanged emails about this, but we didn't have you in studio. But I do want to ask you, and Donald Trump referenced yesterday Bibi Netanyahu's big news conference last week. That was just a total PR stunt, wasn't it?
And almost certainly coordinated with Mike Pompeo being the interlocutor.
But it didn't prove anything.
There was nothing new here. You have to understand the United States has exquisite knowledge of the program. We know all of that. There's nothing new here. Maybe some of that wasn't in the public domain, but we, the United States, our intelligence apparatus, we had penetrated the Iranian nuclear program years ago. We know it's like that horror show. I know what you did last summer.
Yeah.
You know, we know what they did. There's nothing new here whatsoever.
And the key was the tense that was used, right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
The White House says this proves they have, and then they had to change it to had.
Without any explanation. But see, that is John Bolton's view. He has repeatedly said they have a covert program. So that was not an accident. That was not simply a typo. And it's part of their fear campaign. They have this bomb. We can't tell. This inspection regime isn't good enough. Them having a little bit of uranium enrichment is dangerous because, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so we have to strike. We have no choice.
Now, meanwhile, Trump did drop a bomb yesterday. It made a little news when he said that for the second time, Mike Pompeo was on his way to North Korea.
Yes.
Nobody knew anything about it. So that does tell us that there probably is going to be a summit,
yeah.
right?
So
what do you
I'm not in the prediction business anymore.
Okay.
But I want to tell you, it looks very likely, very high probability this summit's going to happen. Both Kim, as Pompeo referred to him the other day, Chairman Un.
No, did he really?
Yeah, this is all over.
That's a long way from Rocket Man.
No. Well, it's
Little
not even,
Rocket
you have to
Man.
say it's not even right. His Kim
Yeah.
is his surname. It's not Un.
Oh, I
Kim
see.
is not his first name. It's his
Yeah,
last
right.
name. It's Kim Jong Un. Anyway, this is what Pompeo, this is our former CIA director, now Secretary of State. Oh, it's a little flurry over in the Twitterverse. Anyway, so he's got Kim has a lot vested in this. I mean, this is a huge win for him, right? So he wants this to happen. So he's making it easy
And he
as
met
possible.
again with the president of China now for the second time.
Exactly. So he's the Koreans, North and South, are playing this beautifully.
They are.
They are driving this train. And now Trump, I think, is completely vested in this, and he wants it. And he wants to be, and you can see that he wants to be able to show that his diplomacy works, because it hasn't worked anywhere. His whole style of negotiation hasn't worked anywhere, and he wants to go to that summit, be on the world stage, and announce a victory. And I think that Kim is going to make some significant concessions. I think it's very likely you are going to get a not too bad deal out of that summit, and that is Trump is going to say, frees me up to do all these other things over here. And I think Bolton has probably signed off on this. He's willing to give North Korea in order to get Iran.
Well, I'm not in the prediction business either, but I will predict that before the summit, these 3 American prisoners will be released from a North Korean prison.
They may come back with Pompeo. That may be what this trip is about.
I'll bet you that's in the cards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, again, on Kim's part, would be brilliant.
Right. And
brilliant.
It's another concession because, I thought that would be the gift he would give Trump at the summit. But he's given this up front. He's like 4 or 5 concessions Kim has already made to pave the way for the summit, because that's what he wants. He wants the President of the United States in that photo op with him.
Now, the last time you were sitting here, you said that North Korea, whatever, if there is a summit, but one thing for sure, North Korea will never, never agree to give up its existing nuclear weapons. Do you still believe that?
Yes, and what they'll do is they'll
but Kim said
commit to the process.
Yeah, Kim said he was that denuclearization. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Is on the table.
Yes, that's right. And they've said this for many years, and they've been talking about this since the 90s. And this is a particular term of art. Denuclearization was invented for the Korean Peninsula. This is where it first came up. Nobody else talks about this anywhere else. And what they mean is the entire peninsula. So for the North, that means we're not going to have a nuclear weapon program. For the South, it means no U.S. nuclear weapons in the South. Now, we don't have any anymore, but we used to have 1,000, by the way.
Yeah.
We took the last ones out in 91. And the North still thinks we have some there, so they want inspections of that. They want to break the nuclear umbrella. So, no, the U.S. cannot include nuclear weapons in its defense commitments to South Korea. Mm-hmm. No exercises with strategic bombers or nuclear subs. No port visits with potentially nuclear armed, etc. Oh, and of course, then you also need a peace treaty, and you have to have a pledge never to attack North Korea. It's actually not an unreasonable deal, but that's what North Korea wants. And you know what? Trump might be willing to give him that. Now, to implement that, you can't do that in a meeting. It's going to take a few years in a step-by-step process. But you could get that. If a Democrat tried to get that, they'd be crucified when they returned home. But Trump, a Republican, might be able to make and get that deal.
So you're saying, and I kind of believe it myself, that Trump, crazy as it sounds, may succeed with North Korea and in bringing some kind of unification, or at least a non-wartime footing to the Korean Peninsula, where previous presidents have not.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I have to tell you, I'm in a bit of a minority here. A lot of my Democratic colleagues, what they fear most of all is that he's going to screw this up and he's going to come back with a bad deal that he's going to try to sell. And I see a lot of my Democratic colleagues trying to get to the right of Trump on this. But I think I should write this op-ed. Donald Trump might stumble into a good deal with North Korea. It's possible. It's possible.
And if he does, will you give him credit?
I will give him credit. I will not nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize, but I will definitely give him credit. And it's true, you know.
No, I think you have
Republicans can often make these kinds of historic breakthroughs that we Democrats can't. I mean, look at Nixon and China. Classic example. You know, Johnson couldn't have gone to China, right? Carter couldn't have gone to China. You needed the hard right hero to go make the deal. That's the only way you get it.
So you got the two guys with bad hair and famous fathers and
princelings. It's going to be a very strange photo op.
I can't wait for the photo op. I mean, I realize that that this is fraught with peril and things could go wrong and all that. But boy, am I looking forward to that photo op.
Chairman Kim and Chairman Don, huh?
All right. Yeah, right.
God. Joe, thanks so much for coming in
My
today.
My pleasure, Bill.
Thanks for everything that you do there at the Ploughshares Fund. Ploughshares.org, the one and only Joe Cirincione. Hey, an exciting new organization on the front dealing with justice issues and the Supreme Court. Brian Fallon is the new head of it, who joins us here in studio. Coming up next. Don't go away. Quick break. We'll be right back. And thanks to the great Joe Cirincione again.
Thank you.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation letter. You're resigning? Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Download our podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Bill Press Show.
On a Wednesday, May 9, welcome back, everybody. The Bill Press Show, Billman here live from Washington, D.C., and our nation's capital, and our studio on Capitol Hill, running fast to keep up with all the news of the day. And we're brought to you today by the American Federation of Government Employees, those good men and women who keep our federal agencies running a day in and day out, proud to wake up and go to work for America every day. I noticed in the Washington Post this morning that Trump is thanking our federal employees. Yeah, he's thanking them by proposing cutting their retirement plans by $143.5 billion. That the thanks they get for doing the good work that they do. That is why we need the good federal AFGE union under President J. David Cox to fight those kind of cuts, which they do on behalf of their members and all American working families every day. We thank them for the support of the program. Salute their good work. Direct you to their website at afge.org. What's happening on the courts? Well, the Republicans are filling up the federal courts with a lot of Trumpers. What are Democrats doing about it? At last, we've got one organization that wants to do something about it. It's a brand new organization called Demand Justice. Brian Fallon, you may remember him as press secretary of the Clinton for President campaign, and good friend and former neighbor here on the Hill, joins us in studio. Brian, it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Welcome back here to the Hill. You've moved away. I don't know.
Yeah, my wife lured me out to Virginia last fall, but I used to live 3 blocks from the studio here. I still miss it.
It's
much easier to get to Nationals games.
Yeah. How about it? And to the Bill Press studio, right?
Exactly.
So tell me, how did Demand Justice come about, and what's your focus?
Well, after the Clinton campaign ended in 2016, I spent a lot of 2017 doing what a lot of Democratic operatives and folks on the left have been focused on, which is opposing Trump in any way possible. So I was involved in fighting the health care repeal effort, fighting the tax bill when that was on the floor last year. I was involved with Priorities USA and trying to help some of those special elections that took place in 2017. Right. But then at the tail end of 2017, I started to have a conversation with some people in the Democratic Party that were just taking note of like one of the areas of unmitigated success for the Trump administration in year one of his presidency, and the area that might have the most lasting legacy for him is this makeover that he's conducting of the federal judiciary. And the Federalist Society obviously has cared a great deal about this for years, and now they're using Trump as their vessel to remake the federal judiciary and install all of these extreme right-wing ideologues to the federal bench who'll be making, they're all in their 40s and 50s, they'll be making decisions that last long after Donald Trump has been expelled
And
from
by the way,
office.
they're getting them confirmed.
And they're getting them confirmed on largely party line votes, sometimes with a nominal amount of Democrats, but largely Mitch McConnell is changing the way that the Senate works in terms of forcing them through. And they set a record last year for the number of appellate court judges that they confirmed, 12 for the circuit court, a historic number. Now it's 16. And just this week, they're going to change the rules again. They're going to violate this sort of unspoken rule called the blue slip rule, where usually you couldn't move a judge without the approval of that judge's 2 home state senators. It was a prerogative that was extended, a courtesy to every senator. And during the Obama administration, it was a big hindrance from Obama getting his people confirmed. There were 18 judges that withered on the vine at the end of his administration. A lot of them would have represented historic firsts that would have brought needed diversity to the federal bench. And all 18 of them were blocked because Republicans in red states decided we're not going to return our blue slip. We're going to exercise a unilateral veto and not allow this Obama nominee to move forward. Well, now the shoe's on the other foot. We have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and Mitch McConnell and Chuck Grassley, who runs the Judiciary Committee for the Republicans, have decided they're not going to honor blue slips anymore. So today they're voting on a judge from Wisconsin, a former lawyer for Scott Walker, who, as you can imagine, is a right-wing ideologue as extreme as the rest of these Trump nominees. And Tammy Baldwin has said, I don't support his nomination going forward, and they're moving him to the floor anyway. This hasn't happened in like 30-something years.
Well, and most of this is happening under the radar.
Totally.
Right? Doesn't get a lot of attention. And meanwhile, Trump and Mitch McConnell are complaining about Democrats being such obstructionists. And every time I hear them say, well, we could get so much done if the Democrats were being so I wish they were being obstructionist.
Yeah.
I wish they had an opportunity to be obstructionist.
Well,
but
Mitch McConnell, I mean, this is such hypocrisy because literally, as I mentioned, the Republicans put a blockade. Everyone remembers the infamous case of Merrick Garland, what they did to Merrick Garland, holding up that confirmation process for a year so they could hold the seat open for Neil Gorsuch. But they literally blocked what would have been the first African-American woman to sit on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, the first African-American judge from Indiana to sit on the Seventh Circuit. Now all these seats are open, and they're filling them with right-wing conservative white males. There's absolutely no diversity to these picks that Donald Trump is putting forward, and Mitch McConnell's only too happy to brag about it. This is literally what they're going to devote the floor agenda to for the rest of the year. They have no more policy making at their fingertips in terms of a legislative agenda. They're just going to do judges, and what we're trying to say to our friends on the left is, yes, let's focus on taking back the House in 2018. Yes, let's tilt the Senate back to the Democrats if we can. Yes, let's work on nominating somebody great that can beat Donald Trump in 2020. But even if we do all that, even in that best case scenario, if we don't take account of what he's doing to the courts right now, we're going to be living with the effects of Trumpism for decades to come.
You bet. Peter,
hey, I hate to interrupt because we tried to get this breaking news in because you and Joe were just talking about the North Korea situation. Breaking news.
Yeah.
3 American prisoners will be released from North Korea. You guys just predicted it. This is going to happen. Donald Trump tweeting this morning, quote, I am pleased to inform you that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in the air and on his way back from North Korea with the 3 wonderful gentlemen that everyone is looking so forward to meeting. They seem to be in good health. So they are coming. They have been released, and they are coming back with Mike Pompeo, as you and Joe Cirincione just
I can't believe it was 5 minutes ago that I
moved
said,
quick.
You watch, they are going to release those prisoners, and he's going to bring them back.
It happened.
You could.
Your crystal ball is very good.
But you could read that.
Yeah.
And yesterday when reporters asked the president, and he said, "We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens."
Right.
Sort of. Yeah.
He knew.
Played his hand. He knew. He knew at the time. Well, again, good for them for bringing them home. I remember when President Clinton brought a couple of prisoners home. I forget if it was the president or Bill Richardson who brought them back from. Where was it? I think wasn't it Korea as well?
Yeah, and it was Bill Clinton. And it was Bill Clinton. Because I remember he went over. Lisa Ling was one of them. He went over there, and I remember the photo that came out of that was Bill Clinton refused to smile for any of the photos because that's what they wanted.
Right.
They wanted an American president to go over there, make it look like they were buddies. And I remember all the photos that came out, Bill Clinton was stone-faced.
Which is very unnatural.
Right.
He was probably biting the inside of his cheek.
A politician not smiling for the camera?
Particularly Bill Clinton.
Particularly
Hey, how you doing? All right. Thank you, Peter, for that was important to get that in. So you mentioned the Merrick Garland thing. Is part of your focus on the Supreme Court?
It will be. So there's a lot of retirement chatter, as happens when you approach the end of a Supreme Court term. And so there's been a lot of speculation that, say, Clarence Thomas may retire at the end of this year, or, God forbid, that Anthony Kennedy, who's been the swing vote on so many of these important cases, that he might retire. And so we're getting ready for that.
No talk that Ruth Bader Ginsburg might retire.
No, and she even publicly made it known that she was hiring 2 years' worth of clerks as a sort of signal to that she wasn't going anywhere anytime soon.
As long as she keeps eating kale.
And doing those push-ups.
And doing the push-ups.
Working out with the resistance bands. Yeah, she's not going anywhere. So we're getting ready for that possibility. We'll probably know that within the next month or so. And, Trump has already released his shortlist, so we know the 24 people that he'll be picking from. So we've got all of our research already conducted on all those 24 people. So in the past, on the left, we've sort of stood up campaigns on an ad hoc basis whenever there's been a Supreme Court vacancy. The right has much more of a permanent infrastructure. The Federalist Society, of course, has existed for decades to create this conservative pipeline so that there's nominees at the ready for whenever a Republican president takes office. And then they have a C4 entity that is their sort of political entity that throws the elbows, known as the Judicial Crisis Network, run by a very smart conservative lawyer, Carrie Severino. And whenever there's a vacancy, they come in with the big bucks from the corporate interests on the right. And in the case of Gorsuch, the left was outspent 20-1 on trying to define Neil Gorsuch. So we're still going to be outmatched and outgunned. We're never going to match the resources that exist on the right, but we're going to try to help stand up a little bit sturdier of a pushback effort if there is a Supreme Court fight.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that before. They really do have this infrastructure built in, right? So that as soon as there's a vacancy, they're there, full
They're
bore.
ready to go. And Judicial Crisis Network does advertising on an on and off basis about lower court nominations because they take this issue seriously. They only exist to advance that issue. And so they're up right now with $1 million television ad buy trying to pressure Democrats to go along with some of these nominees on the floor this week, including this guy Michael Brennan from Wisconsin who's going to get this vote today. What we are saying back to Democrats is, hey, show some backbone. If they are railroading you here on this pick from Wisconsin. So we came out with a petition yesterday that we launched with a few other groups like People for the American Way, Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights, and Alliance for Justice, where we said, hey, Democrats, if they go forward with confirming Michael Brennan from Wisconsin, you should stop voting for any more of these Trump nominees. I mean, Democrats continue to give votes to some of these guys, and I don't see what the political upside for it is. I don't see why they want to have any role as an accomplice in helping midwife this takeover of the judiciary that Trump's conducting. And yet you still have Democrats, on an off and on basis, voting for these Trump nominees. We looked it up. A majority of the Senate Democratic caucus has voted for more than half of Trump's nominees. Why? Yeah. Why are they being a party to this? And so, especially when Trump and McConnell, have decided to jam them like they're doing with this guy Michael Brennan. Also today, they're going to hold a hearing on another nominee, Ryan Bounds, a guy from Oregon for the Ninth Circuit. He has not been approved by either of the two Democratic senators from Oregon. The Ninth Circuit is historically a left-leaning circuit, as you know, Bill. There are 3 open seats from California that the White House right now has to decide who they're going to nominate. And Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein, the ranking member on Judiciary, are in active negotiations with them. I guarantee you the White House is going to decide to just jam those 2 Democratic senators from California and try to impose some hard right-wingers on those to fill those 3 seats from California. And think of how important the Ninth Circuit is. They issued the injunction last year on the travel ban. They're going to hear ultimately this case on the Jeff Sessions' Justice Department is suing California over sanctuary cities. Ninth Circuit's going to hear that case. California is challenging the federal government over climate policy. And so the Ninth Circuit is so critically important, and Trump is about to swing it far to the right if we don't stand up to this railroad.
I mean, I hate to use the word, but the Ninth Circuit has really been the wall, or maybe the firewall, against a lot of policies that even the last year and a half that Trump, but over the years, they've been the outstanding progressive voice, if you will, on the federal court system.
And there's 8 vacancies in it right now,
and
3 from California.
Trump has been holding back right until they
Washington Post had a big story on this on Monday, that the Ninth Circuit's probably the next one he's going to focus on and try to remake in his conservative image. And that would take away a historically progressive-leaning circuit. And so our call to Senate Democrats is, hey, they're coming for you guys. They're railroading Tammy Baldwin today. Next week, it's going to be the Oregon senators with this guy, Ryan Bounds. And in a couple weeks, it may be Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris. It's time to stand up and say, we're not going to be a party to this. We're not going to vote for any more of your people. We need to bring some attention to this issue. The left has gotten too complacent about the courts.
You would think that Chuck Schumer would get this.
Chuck Schumer actually was an innovator in the issue of the courts back, if you remember, during the judicial confirmation wars in 2004-05. He was one of the people that stood up to Miguel Estrada and some of the more hard right-leaning nominees from the Bush administration, saying that, hey, we can no longer just say that if you went to the right law school, you went to Yale Law School, you had the right clerkships, that we're just going to confirm you without second-guessing your ideology. We want to take a look at your decisions because we want people that are in the judicial mainstream. And he sort of normalized that as a consideration that was fair to take into account in Senate confirmation processes. And so I think he's doing. I think he understands the importance of the courts in our system. But I think that we need to convince the left at an activist level, at a grassroots level, that they need to just put a small percentage of the activism that's going into opposing Trump generally into this issue, because it's the one that Trump and McConnell care so deeply about.
Isn't part of the problem maybe that people don't understand the reason the courts? It's just even at the local level. I remember, as involved as I was in politics in California, and even when I vote today, I must tell you, right? I get the ballot because we still vote in California, so that our vote counts for something in California. But when I get the ballot, okay, I know the senators, I know the members of Congress, I kind of know the state legislators. But it gets down to the courts. Hell, I don't know who to vote for. Right? People don't pay much attention to those. I usually end up calling a friend of mine. At least I'll do that rather than just guess. Right. I call a friend of mine to say, hey, how should I vote in this or this or this? But most people, they don't know the judges. They don't know the names. They don't.
Totally. But the right has invested in caring about this, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, too. If you look at Trump's short list, the 24 names he's floated for a potential next vacancy, almost half of them are from state Supreme Courts, because the Federalist Society is increasingly trying to replenish their bench of young, hard, right-leaning conservatives by stocking these state Supreme Courts with former aides to Scott Walker or former aides to the governor of Texas, and then bring them up through the ranks of the state Supreme Courts and then elevate them immediately to the federal bench from the state Supreme Court.
And once they're on the federal bench, they're there
for life.
For life.
For life.
Yeah.
And so, and Mitch McConnell, I mean, all we have to do, our group is going to have to do is just advertise Mitch McConnell's own words, because he was on Hugh Hewitt on Monday or last Thursday, I think, just bragging about this, bragging about the fact that so many of these guys, and they're mostly guys, are in their 40s and early 50s,
guys.
And they're gonna. And he has said our goal is to move the country right of center. He's very open about that. On the left, I think we cling to these romantic notions that the courts are beyond partisanship, and they should be. But the right doesn't treat it that way. They treat it as scorched earth, zero sum, raw political game. They want their people on the bench making decisions on LGBTQ equality, about reproductive freedoms, about money in politics. And we need to wake up and start fighting back.
And when they, so in terms of any president's legacy, right, no matter who it is, the most lasting legacy are probably the people that they put on the courts.
Absolutely. And
because there you can't dislodge them except impeachment if they do something really, really bad. But otherwise.
And we tend to think of president's legacies with respect to Supreme Court nominees, but even if Donald Trump doesn't get another vacancy at the highest court, and I hope he doesn't, what he's doing is so vast and expansive at the level of the circuit courts. The circuit courts here decide 90% of the biggest disputes of our day, because the Supreme Court can only take so many cases a year. And so if he succeeds in tilting the balance of a circuit court like the Ninth Circuit, that is going to have reverberations for decades to come. It's why, at the tail end of the Obama administration, Democrats sort of finally woke up to this. And if you remember, the whole reason that Harry Reid went nuclear was because the Republicans were not letting him confirm any of Obama's picks to the D.C. Circuit, which is considered the second most important court in the country behind only the Supreme Court. And Harry Reid said, filling these 3 seats with these Obama nominees is so important. We're gonna break the filibuster for lower court judges, and installed some very ardent, bold progressives that are issuing great, fiery dissents and opinions. And some of these cases, you may remember the case a few weeks ago about an undocumented minor that was pregnant. The Trump administration did not want to let her leave custody in order to exercise her right to freedom of choice. And then it was the D.C. Circuit that said, "Oh no, you don't." And that was an Obama nominee that wrote that decision.
Brian Fallon's the head of this new organization called Demand Justice. Your website is demandjustice.org.
Yes, sir.
Where people can find out more about some of these battles and these court case or the court confirmations, judicial confirmations that are up. And so, how can you get activists around the country to care about this and plug in and do something about it? And what are you asking them to do?
So we're going to be very active in the digital space. Unlike Judicial Crisis Network, which really just sort of engages episodically whenever there's a Supreme Court vacancy, and then when they do engage, they usually spend millions of dollars on television. Our engagement is going to be more enduring and more permanent, and it's going to be largely in the digital space. We're going to be an online organizing entity. We're going to be focused on 14 or 15 states, the states that are critical in terms of the Senate votes, so states that have swing or persuadable Republicans. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in states like Colorado and North Carolina because Cory Gardner and Tom Tillis, they're in cycle next in 2020, not in 2018, but in 2020. They're going to be among the most vulnerable Senate incumbents next when we get into the next cycle. So we're going to start investing on the ground there to pressure them. But we're also going to be investing in states where Democrats occupy safe blue seats, but they've been a little bit wayward in their voting record. You have a good, strong Democratic senator in Amy Klobuchar representing a strong blue state of Minnesota, but when Al Franken was still serving in the Senate, there was a situation with a nominee for the circuit court out of Minnesota. Al Franken drew a line in the sand. This is a guy that has a horrible record on women, David Strauss, who's now a confirmed judge. Al Franken said, no, I'm not going to return my blue slip. And Amy Klobuchar decided to play ball and help advance him and even introduced him at a hearing. And so I only think that happens because senators like Amy Klobuchar are not hearing anything from the left because the left is not informed or engaged about the types of records of these judges. So we're going to do the job of trying to inform those grassroots people on the ground in these states.
Yeah, to make this an issue that people really do care about. And
if you think back to like a century ago, Supreme Court justices and people of the law were leading voices and thinkers on the left. Justice Brandeis, and we can get back to that time. There's no reason why we can't. If you look at the huge outsized role that Antonin Scalia occupies on the conservative right, RBG has started to become an iconic figure similarly, but we want to sort of nurture a conversation where we think of the courts as like a venue where we advance our goals as progressives.
You know, we hear it all the time during presidential campaigns, but it really is true, isn't it, that the Supreme Court is like the number one reason on how you vote for president?
On the right. Yeah. And you saw how many times
anybody, I mean, if you care about
it should be
issues,
but it was really only true on the right in this past election.
Yes.
How many mainstream Mitt Romney style Republicans were publicly saying that we're holding our nose and voting for Donald Trump even though he offends us in so many regards because of the Supreme Court. They're so animated. They're so animated around the issue of guns and around choice and abortion. That they make the Supreme Court a voting issue on their side. We do not do it on our side. We're going to try to change that. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to be hard, but we're going to try to change it.
We should, because of the issues coming. Look at the issues that are up this year in terms of...
All these issues.
Think
of all the things
immigration, the Dreamers, the Janus issue for public employee unions.
Everything that has inspired activism in the last year is ultimately going to be settled by the courts. The travel ban is going to be settled by the 5-4 Supreme Court with Neil Gorsuch sitting on it. The DACA policy, whether that's capricious for Trump to be overturning it and arbitrary and is going to be decided probably by the Supreme Court next year. We've had a lot of lower court injunctions that have prevented that reversal from going into effect.
I was just thinking too, the reapportionment decisions in Wisconsin and
if you care about gerrymandering, if you care, all these issues are ultimately resolved in the courts. So it makes no sense to only sort of engage in activism to pressure Congress, but then not pay any attention to the judges that are ultimately going to decide these issues.
No, that's the message of Demand Justice. That's the importance of having this new organization, Demand Justice, and how lucky we are that we got Brian Fallon to head it. Brian, thanks so much for what you're doing.
Thanks you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Check in, plug in, be part of it, demandjustice.org. The rest of Wednesday is all yours, friends. Make the most of it, and then come back and see us again tomorrow.
This is the Bill Press Show.